Welcome back to Killer Fun, where we explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week. I'm Christy.
I'm Jackie.
And we're so glad that you're back with us today. Today, we're talking about the first 2 episodes of The Following.
How did you like it?
I have mixed feelings about this.
Really? How so?
It was interesting. It was exciting. And I think that our heroes are a little dumb.
Okay.
I don't think that they're like completely dumb, but I think in the first episode, I was like, okay, I can totally get on board that they're not geniuses. They're trying to catch up. This guy's been planning, the serial killer has been planning all this stuff. He's been building his following, which we'll get to in a minute. He's been planning his escape and all these games. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I could totally get there. And then there's some things that happen in the second episode that I was like, have they learned nothing?
Okay. I know we'll get there in the recap. I'm so desperately trying to think through and see if I can go, oh yeah, I can see what you're saying, but I'm not there yet. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
We'll get there.
But Kevin Bacon is great.
Kevin Bacon, he really is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he plays Ryan Hardy, and he actually won a Saturn Award for his role for the first season.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I mean, of course, he's been in tons of stuff. That's why there's 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, he's been in like everything.
And he actually didn't have as many IMDb credits as I expected him to have, but he's been in a lot. But it's not so much that he's been in a lot. He's been in a lot with different types of people. Like he's continually working with new people. You know how you have some actors who continually work with the same director or the same group of other actors.
Right.
You know,
like Adam Sandler.
Yeah. Adam Sandler or Woody Allen. You know, he's got his favorites. He works with certain types of people. Kevin Bacon just seems to work with everybody.
Well, he can do so many different things.
Yeah.
You know, he's very versatile.
Yeah. He does movies. He does television. He does all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like how he can be equally fun and giddy as he can be very, very heavy.
Yes.
You know, and that's something I really like about the show. The first 2 episodes, especially, is you really get a taste for, Hollywood tricks, because he looks so grizzled.
Yes.
And then they flash back and you know that's filmed at the same time. And all of a sudden he is so substantially like younger and tight looking. And then he's so like grizzled and jowled, you know, and you're like, reminder to self. Yeah. Hollywood is Hollywood.
Yeah. Hollywood is Hollywood.
Hollywood is Hollywood.
Yep. Exactly. Because, you know, they film all those scenes where he has to look all grizzled when he's not shaved and, you know.
Yeah, and then
they
do
shave him and like
things.
Exactly.
They contour him to look a little older, I think.
I didn't ask you what you thought. Did you like it? You seem like you really like it because you seem very surprised that I didn't.
I'm surprised that you didn't. I really like this story.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I really do. Okay. Now, in full disclosure, you know, I've already watched this entire series.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Like, I've watched this entire series like a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
So I know the series, but it's been a while.
Okay.
So watching the first couple episodes, and really I just watched the first 3 episodes, getting back into it was just as good as I remember it.
Oh, good.
In fact, I remember I watched this one and then I tried to watch The Killing because I thought it would have the same kind of feeling. And then it was so dreadfully boring that I was like so disappointed.
See, but I really liked The Killing. But it did. It took... You had to be in the right headspace for it.
I guess so. I got bored with it because I was actually really invested for a while. It was...
Well, and then they didn't solve the murder at the end of the first season, and a lot of people were really mad.
Right. And actually, it was in the middle of the second season that I started to find myself drifting off and going,
I don't really care who killed her.
Yeah, I don't really care anymore.
What was her name? Rosie?
Yeah, I don't even remember.
I don't remember.
It just got so like, But The Following, lots of twists and turns, lots of unfolding, right? Lots of, that's why this, and I like it. It's fun.
You're good at secret keeping because you did not tell me that you had watched this before. You turkey, keeping secrets from me. All right, then we have Jean Ann Goosen, who played Jennifer Mason. She's done lots of TV roles, and I mentioned her because she was on several episodes of Criminal Minds, Fiona Duncan. I thought you would recognize her from that. Natalie Zea, Z-E-A, plays Claire Matthews. But I recognized her. She's done lots of TV roles. I recognized her from her role as Carrie on Californication. Because, man, that show is adults only and can be very troubling. But David Duchovny is just so gorgeous. Yeah.
Were you an X-Files fan?
Oh, yes. That's one of those shows that I'm like, there's nothing on. Let's put on the X-Files.
That's funny. We started to watch over the whole series again, a long time ago. And yeah, it's pretty fun. And then we watched the new one that came out. You know.
Oh, yeah. But, we watched that too. And that one, it didn't have as much charm. I don't know what it was about it. Maybe just because the tension wasn't as much there.
Maybe so.
Because they had been together.
Yeah, maybe so.
Spoiler alert in case you haven't seen, in case you didn't see the X-Files.
In a way, it's the sci-fi version of a very long Ross and Rachel story.
It really, really is. Exactly. Yeah. Then we have James Purefoy, who played Joe Carroll. He's done lots and lots of television. Also, he was on a small part in the Netflix original series Sex Education, which was actually really good.
Was it good? I never watched it.
Good. It was funny and smart, and it didn't make the teenagers seem stupid. So often you'll see shows and they just portray the teenagers as kind of dumb.
Right.
Which, to be fair, teenagers can be kind of dumb, but it really respects that they're not always dumb.
Right. And that there's a reason they don't know everything.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how we like to get mad at teenagers for not knowing everything, and then we call them freaking know-it-alls when they learn something, and then when they do know something, we're like mad about it. Anyways, it's just very strange.
I try never to tell my kids they're a know-it-all.
Yeah.
Because, that they've both learned to be pretty good about listening.
That's most important.
Yeah. And so when they know something, they know something.
Yeah.
It's like they're in it. My son's super into space right now, and he doesn't really want to do it for a living. No, he's not at all interested in the space program or anything as far as a potential career. Because he knows it takes a lot of really complicated
science,
which he likes. He says he doesn't like them, but he does like them. I can tell because he tells me chemistry is like tiny space. And
oh my gosh, Alex says that a lot too.
Oh, good. Okay, that's good. But he's not really interested in pursuing that kind of stuff, but he's got a lot of passion for it. So it's kind of interesting to see.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, Purefoy, I have to mention this because in A Knight's Tale.
Yes, that's what was going to be my next thing.
It's so good.
With Heath Ledger. Oh man, I love that movie.
That movie is so good.
It was so campy, but still clever and so endearing. And there's so much to like about that movie.
There's so much to like. My boys loved it. I showed it to them. They really enjoyed it too.
Then we have Maggie Grace plays Sarah Fuller, and she's another Californication alum. Because I was like, where have I seen her? And she was also in the last two Twilight movies, which I've also seen. And then the final one that I'm going to mention is Nico Tortorella and Jacob, the gay neighbor, who's not really gay, but we'll get to that in a minute. He's the hot boyfriend of Sutton Foster in the Hulu show Younger.
Oh,
which is excellent. And I love Sutton Foster.
Yeah.
It's just clever and funny. And she has to pretend to be 15 years younger than she is to be able to get a job in publishing in New York. And it was great.
I might be check that out.
It was fun.
Actually, there's a lot of pretty faces in this because Adam Canto, and he played in Designated Survivor. Pretty awesome.
Who was he?
Paul, Jacob and Paul in the...
God, they were gorgeous. It was one of those that I'm like, it's unfair that they are gay.
Keep watching.
I know, keep watching.
Keep watching. But I have to mention Sam Underwood. We aren't there yet. He's not in these episodes.
Okay.
But after today, go continue watching this series.
Okay.
Because Sam Underwood pulls off an acting feat in this series that is unparalleled.
Really?
Seriously, unparalleled. And in fact, if you like,
You're giving me a reason to watch this.
If you like that new one that came out, Living with Yourself, Paul Rudd. Okay, if you like that kind of acting, like the whole idea of somebody playing their own.
That was actually really good. Yeah.
It's amazing, but it was pioneered here. Sam Underwood changes the face of what it means to parallel yourself. He really is. He's an absolute linchpin. I mean, the acting is amazing. He's a very versatile actor also. He can be he was in Dexter.
Yeah.
He played in Dexter. Yeah. He's a very, so keep watching after this episode that we talk about. Okay. Just keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
We're going to recap real quick. 2 episodes. Can I say we got the 2 episodes with the most boring titles? Episode 1's called The Pilot, and episode 2 is called Chapter 2. And I get that it's just a whole like literary thing that they call it Chapter 2, but after that, all the episode names get much better. They're much more interesting, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's about. Oh, I wonder what that's about. I'm looking up
the names. Wait. Because I don't ever pay attention to the names. Actually, I thought of you because you're so good at naming our show. Like all of our episodes have such amazingly witty names.
Oh, thanks.
And I needed to name something recently. And I was like, I need to text Christy because I can't figure out how to name this. I want it to be, so it's our little newsletter and blog post thing that I have to send out every once in a while. And I can't name them to save my life. I'm just too pragmatic, I guess.
Anytime you need help, just let me know. But let me tell you, is literally the day before these episodes are released, because I'm like, what am I going to name this? I'm sit at a screen and I'm like, what am I going to name this?
But you're so good at it. See, look at this. I would have named it Pilot and Chapter 2, and then they would have hired you, and then they would have started naming it The Poet's Fire and Mad Love and The Siege and all of this. Like, this would be you. And I would have done Pilot.
Well, thanks.
In Chapter 2. In fact, me, Friends, I could have maybe pulled off the one with I thought that was super witty, but how easy is that to actually then do it?
Yeah. Well, it was one good idea that they were able to make work for 10 seasons.
Oh my God. Efficient creativity. So I love it.
Yes. Me too. Me too. All right. The pilot.
Let's go through it. Recap.
There's a very exciting prison escape from Virginia's Central Penitentiary. Many guards die, and Joe Carroll, a serial killer, played by James Purefoy, drives right out the front gate, disguised as a guard. In Brooklyn, Ryan Hardy, who's Kevin Bacon, played by Kevin Bacon. He isn't Kevin Bacon.
He isn't Kevin Bacon. He's played by Kevin Bacon.
He's ignoring phone calls until he flips on the television and sees that the serial killer has escaped. And we quickly learn a bunch of stuff. He's a former FBI agent. He was the one who caught the killer who escaped from prison. He has some sort of injury in his chest that has healed, obviously, but it seems like it's important for us to know. He probably has a drinking problem because he put vodka in a water bottle. And he wrote a book about this serial killer. He was the topic of the book. So we learn all of those things in 30 seconds.
I mean, hardly 30 seconds. It's so fast. It's
so
here's what you need to know to enjoy this.
Which I was like, that is a nice little bit of filmmaking there to tell us that much information that quickly.
Yep.
I'm like, nice. The police arrive at a home. They're there to protect Sarah Fuller, who was the final victim of Carol, the serial killer, and she survived her attack and testified against him. Ryan goes to the prison, and he arrives dramatically in a helicopter. I was like, really?
Well, yeah, of course.
A helicopter?
Of course. Of course. Why not?
They go and look in his cell where he'd been on death row, and they find a copy of Ryan Hardy's book, The Poetry of a Killer, and there's a note to Ryan in it that somehow the forensic team missed this just entirely. Then there's this makeshift command center set up. There are a bunch of people waiting, and there's a bunch of agents there looking around at stuff, trying to figure stuff out and making plans. And Ryan gives us some insight into the serial killer since he's very well aware of him. He wrote a flop of a novel called The Gothic Sea. He was super influenced by Edgar Allan Poe, and the murders that he committed prior to being in the prison that he just escaped from were a tribute to the author. And Ryan was stabbed by Carol in their final encounter.
Yes. And now he has a pacemaker.
Yes. There's a bunch of women in the waiting room, and we learned that they're groupies that had visited Carol in prison, and he'd had 112 visitors in 2 years, and that's a lot.
Hey, didn't we talk about this sort of thing just this past episode?
Yeah, we sure did. So one of the visitors stands in the lobby, and then she undresses to reveal that she has had lines from the Raven written all over her body. And then she says, "Lord, help my poor soul," and stabs herself in the eye with an ice pick.
It's very, very dramatic.
Very, very dramatic. She dies, and it's revealed that she had multiple identities, at least 2 of which went to visit Carol in prison.
She's a very interesting person. And you know what? The first time you see her, I was looking at her going, that's an interesting dress.
Well,
why is she in that dress? Like, I don't think I'd ever wake up and like put that dress on. And what's really funny is I thought the same thing this time when I watched it again, kind of forgetting what was about to happen. And I realized apparently I'm very, very, judgmental about clothing that I didn't really quite recognize, like how much I hated it.
Jackie learning stuff about herself watching the Following.
So I was like, really, I don't know why I have such a hatred for that, like, particular style.
It was an ugly dress.
It was kind of an ugly dress, but it's just a particular style, and I don't know, I'm drawn into it because immediately I'm going to the same monologue in my head going, what young woman would like drab out this dress? Like, why in the world? I couldn't see and then she rips it off. I'm like, oh yeah,
that's
it's efficient. Okay.
Carol's ex-wife, we see her. The FBI and the police have gone to talk to her, and she will only talk to Ryan. And we learned that Carol and his ex-wife were professors at a university, and that his last victim, Sarah, who survived and testified against him, was an enamored student. Carol was acting as his own attorney in prison for his appeals. He was accessing all of the law books on a computer in the library. They didn't have all the books there. They have them on the computer. And he'd use some sort of sophisticated virus to get on the internet and make a whole bunch of websites and build a following. And they realized he must have had help from a guard. So they look at the roster of who worked there and realize that Jordy Rains had called in sick the night of the escape. So he becomes their primary suspect. They go to Jordy's home and they find out he's been killing dogs to learn how to become a serial killer. Dun, dun, dun.
Really creepy.
Yeah. It's really gross. Sarah Fuller, the first victim, or the last victim. She wasn't the first victim.
Not the first.
No.
The last.
Yeah. She has her friends, the gay neighbors, over to keep her company, but she's tired. And so she decides she's going to go to bed. They offer to watch a movie and play games with her. And she's like, I think I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. As she's preparing to go to bed, we see many, many scars on her. And then a flashback of Carol breaking into the sorority house, and Carol kills Sarah's sorority sister right there in front of her. Ryan speaks with Carol's ex-wife. She said she only wanted to talk to him. And so he goes to speak with her alone. And we realize that she knows him really well. Because she asks him about his heart and his drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know.
She knows.
Really quite quickly.
Yeah.
About their
relationship. That they were very familiar with one another.
Yes.
So she reveals to Ryan that she got a letter from Carol the week prior, and he had declared that he wanted to finish things, which Ryan interprets as he needs to kill Sarah Fuller because she's the last thing that he left undone. And it's just very convenient that he talks to her and rushes over and makes the connections right as events are about to transpire. So he goes to check on Sarah, and of course, she's not there. Nope. She's been kidnapped because there was a false back in the rear of one of her closets that between her condo and her gay neighbor's condo, and she's been kidnapped by the gay neighbors, and we know this because they're all gone, and we also know that they're followers of Carol's because they've killed one of the police officers and written "Nevermore" in his blood in their garage. It's very creepy.
It's all extremely creepy.
Yes. Then we see a flashback of Sarah's original attack and how Ryan saved her and got his injury. They're searching the gay neighbor's condo for clues, and Ryan sees the couple at a bed and breakfast called the Lighthouse, and Ryan decides to go look there for missing Sarah. And while he's there, he's attacked by Carol and finds out Sarah's already been murdered.
Which is a throwback to one of the Poe poems. So he kind of makes the dots because he's so used to putting it through that lens of seeing all of the poems and seeing what Carol would like. He knows this guy, and so he realizes,
well, and the Lighthouse was the unfinished work of Poe at the end. So
he puts it together pretty quickly.
Yeah,
like he knows it's a game pretty quickly.
He knows it's a game. He played the game with Carol for years. Yeah, while he was trying to capture him. And he's used to putting it all through a Poe lens. So it didn't not make sense to me that he put that together. You know, sometimes they're like too smart.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, how did you get there? This makes sense. Yeah. Carol's captured. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He wasn't really ever thinking he was going to stay out of prison. I don't think.
No.
I don't think so. I think he kind of always intended or expected to be recaptured after he killed Sarah Fuller, and that was kind of okay with him because what he says later in the episode sort of, and in the next episode sort of, gives you this impression that this is a long con. Oh yeah, he's got a lot of games he wants to play. After he's back in prison, Carol wants to talk to Ryan. He wants Ryan to write another book. And I was like, hey, look, it's the 8th psychopath.
I know, right? Exactly.
Like we just covered 7 psychopaths where the psychopath did a lot of terrible things to help a guy write a movie. And
now we're writing a book.
Now we're writing a book.
I'm just kind of like, why not just write the book?
Yeah, just write the book yourself and don't involve a bunch of people's murder in it.
I forgot he's a failed writer.
Moving on. Ouch. This is where we get the insinuation that Ryan and Carol's ex-wife Claire had a romantic relationship. So we knew that they knew each other. If you didn't get it the first time they talked, they had a romantic relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
And Ryan gets mad and breaks Carol's fingers, which he deserved it.
Yeah, pretty fun.
Rightly so.
Yep. Not worried about it.
Nope. We had learned earlier that Joe Carroll and his ex-wife Claire had a son named Joey. Now Joey's missing here at the end of the episode. This is our cliffhanger. Then we learned that the babysitter, the nanny, Denise, is an acolyte of Carol's, and she goes to meet the not so gay couple in a parking lot, and they run away with the boy.
Yes.
That is the end of the episode. And chapter 2. Mm-hmm. So Jordy, the prison guard, is wearing his uniform and posing as campus security at Winslow University, and thus gains access to Delta Rho Gamma sorority house. He's very familiar with the house, threw a kit onto the windowsill earlier, and proceeds to do some terrible things in that house.
Yeah, he's not a He's the kind of person, by person, I mean character. This is the type of character that is super creepy because he actually doesn't look super creepy. No. He kind of looks like a, not so bright puppy, which are the ones that are more loving and fun. And so you kind of almost trust them instinctually. You just don't see it coming.
He's got a very welcoming, kind of face.
Yeah. But he's also very, very demented.
Oh, yes. Then we see the kidnappers of Joey, Denise, the babysitter, Jacob and Paul, the quote-unquote gay couple. They take Joey to this idyllic home. You think he's getting hurt, but he's not. They're just playing. Denise tells Joey that his mom does not want them to call. We learn for sure that Paul and Jacob are not gay because Jacob is involved with Denise, and Paul does not like Joey or children at all. Then we see Deborah Parker. She's the FBI agent in charge of the whole investigation, and she's trying to decide how to involve Ryan in their investigation. He wants a gun. He wants to be deputized. She is concerned about his heart and his drinking. Fair. The sorority house is discovered as a crime scene. Jordy didn't try to conceal his identity at all, and he's following Carol's tactics of murder. So Claire visits Carol to try and figure out Joey's whereabouts. And we get actual confirmation that Claire and Ryan did have a romantic relationship briefly after she divorced this serial killer while he was in prison. Then we learn that Denise's name is really Emma. And like Sarah, she was a student. And the FBI figures this out after looking at footage of visitors going to see inmates. And they go to her former address. It's abandoned. Nobody's been there in a long time. They break in. They find lots of Poe-inspired graffiti in the house. And while they're there, Ryan's attacked by a man or a person in a Poe mask, which is super creepy.
It was scary. Like, they filmed that really well.
They really did, because it made me jump and gasp. Which I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. I kind of enjoy the jump scares.
Right.
So the FBI finally admits that this is a cult, something that they had not wanted to admit prior, and that Poe's writing is the sacred text for this particular cult. We learn that Emma/Denise and Jacob and Paul have all visited Carol in prison. And then we learn how Emma and Jacob got together, and it was because Carol set them up.
Yeah, Carol brought them together.
We see a memory, a flashback of the mother, Emma's mother, flirting with Jacob while they're there for a meal. Thanksgiving, I don't know, or just a general meal.
I think it was just over for dinner.
Just a general meal. And the mom's real belittling towards her daughter, talking about how she's like not pretty enough and
very
not smart
Jane.
enough. Yeah. And real belittling, but also flirty with Jacob, which as she had been when she met Carol in front. Carol had obviously taken an interest in this young girl, Emma, and the mom was super flirty. And Emma then literally stabs her mother in the back.
Yes.
Jacob is surprised, but not shocked or scared.
And also, quite delighted, actually.
Yeah. It makes him really like her a lot more. So then back in the present time, they're in Emma's old house and they go up to the attic and they find the mother sealed in a wall, photos of all of Carol's victims, and Claire's photo is among them. They have plans for Claire's home. So, of course, they go rushing over there. Claire's about to go to bed and an officer checks her bedroom poorly. This is where I'm like, did we learn nothing from Sarah's death?
Yeah, but I'm glad that they addressed this issue after the fact, though.
Yeah. Yes.
They addressed it because they got onto them.
Yeah.
The FBI had used the local Leos, right?
Yeah.
To do that kind of portion. And so after all of this happens.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah. Jordy's there. He attacks the police officer.
And he very, very agilely jumps down from the ceiling. And I'm like, first of all, there ain't no way that man ain't making a boom.
Yeah, well, Jordy's a big guy.
He's a big dude.
He's a big guy. And it was like he lowered himself like he'd been a yoga master.
Like Cirque du Soleil coming out of the freaking ceiling. And I was like,
all
no.
like super slow and it's trying to build tension.
First of all, he fit. I was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, he comes down and I was like, he ain't that strong.
No,
So that was little, whatever.
Yeah, agreed.
Suspend your disbelief.
Yes. He takes Claire hostage. And of course, Ryan shows up in the nick of time. Mm-hmm. And Geordi tells them that he has a plan. Either Geordi kills Claire while Ryan watches, or Ryan has to kill Geordi, which are, the two ways that Carol is going to torture Ryan from afar.
Right.
Ryan shoots Geordi. He ends up being not wounded enough to die. He's going to recover fully. Ryan goes to see Carol in prison. Carol is very pleased that Claire is alive. I get the impression that he could have gone either way, but he prefers her alive because the games are much more fun if she's alive.
Right.
And Geordi's survival wasn't part of the plan, but it'll be fine. He was expendable anyway.
Yes, but he does give away some clues in his frustration because he did expect Geordi to die.
Yes,
he
did.
Sort of expected Ryan to show up. He sort of expected that Ryan would win the standoff.
Yeah.
But when he realizes that Geordi is alive, you can see that he's actively kind of like, ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that.
He expected him to die either way.
Right. He really did.
Yeah.
He's either going to just thought,
he's either going to die and Claire is going to be saved, or he's going to kill Claire and end up dying.
Right. And so he was surprised. And so he let a couple things slip.
Yeah. That's interesting. Claire asks Ryan to stay, even though there's additional security, because she trusts no one. And rightfully so. So, okay, wait. So how does the episode end? It ends with Deborah Parker, FBI leader, taking Carol a copy of Poe's work in prison. And I'm not quite sure what that means. I don't know if she's a part of it or if she's just trying to ingratiate herself to get more information from
Giving
him.
a dog a bone, seeing what he chews on.
Yeah.
I don't know
either. And then we end with a person in a Poe mask lighting a man on fire at a hot dog vendor.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
Very dramatic.
Very, very dramatic.
Yeah. This was an article written at the end of the first season by Graham McMillan. Why the Following just might be the most insulting show on TV.
What?
And they kind of had the same feeling that I did. I'm like, these people are a little bit dumb. And they said it started off pretty good, but that every episode throughout the end of the first season, it wasn't so much that the psychopath was so smart. It was that the FBI was kind of dumb. That he was they're like, none of the plans that he made really could only have come from the mind of this genius, that it was really like bumbling mistakes that the FBI made that these things continued to work.
I mean, I guess I can kind of see that, but I also think that maybe we're expecting more out of the FBI in general and then more out of the FBI characters in here than you're really supposed to.
Well, and you forgive a lot to be able to have this drama, but that you really need it to be a fair fight. You really need the opponents to be evenly matched. And he felt like they weren't as evenly matched as they should be. And this was interesting. Otherwise, the show becomes something different, a potentially darker one, somewhere where evil is cunning and ever present while the forces of good bumble haplessly behind.
Oh, welcome to the earth. Well, I don't know. Have you been here for a while? I mean,
okay,
that's kind of your truth, which is like,
it is true, but on the to be honest, that's not what I want from my entertainment.
I guess that's true.
Okay.
To me, what I kind of see is not just a difference in intelligence, because he's right. The plans aren't about being so super smart. They're about not being lazy. Oh. It's really a testament to the work he put in. He puts all this work into all of these things. He does the work. He puts in the effort. He brings people together. He makes the plans. And that's what's fun about it. And then even Hardy, in the first couple episodes, we see his frustration with the FBI, how they don't want to think about things. They don't want to do the hard work.
They don't want to admit that it's a cult.
They don't want to admit that it's a cult. They don't want to, they're lazy. And that's his kind of like, I'm done with this. So I see what is really not a discussion of talent and skill or intelligence. It's a matter of effort and putting the work in to do the job well. And so the bumbling I see is so back to that scene, right? So Jordy has, Claire Matthews by gunpoint, and Hardy rushes in. So Ryan's here to save the day, and he's smart. Now the FBI is outside the door, and he says, "Do you want me to close the door? You want me to close the door?" And he kind of does it slowly enough that the FBI guy is able to stick a gun in his back pocket, before the door's closed. And so the shooting happens, and they're debriefing. And so the local EOs are all standing around, and the FBI is ripping the captain a new one.
Yeah.
The person on the force who's there. And she makes this really awful excuse. Well, he was hiding underneath and behind an AC unit we didn't know was there. How are we supposed to know to look there if we didn't know the AC unit was there? And the FBI turns around and says, that was your job to know it was there. And then the FBI says, if you're not FBI, out of this house.
Yeah.
So they basically fire them from doing the job. And it was kind of like another testament to this whole idea that you don't do your jobs. You don't think ahead about these things. Oh, the killer's going after his last victim. How did you not think of this?
Yeah.
Why aren't you ahead of this?
Right.
And so it's kind of like a indictment.
Well, and they thought they were, to be fair. But yes, that's,
okay. I don't know.
Well, I have all kinds of is it true and some psychology stuff and some real life stuff, but we're going to get to all that right after a quick break.
Dad, I'm hungry.
Hi, Hungry. I'm Dad. The podcast where nerdy dads talk nerdy fads.
We talk life, entertainment, and give advice to those who never asked for it.
Like, anytime I do anything, my brother calls me a thought. What do I do?
Or, best college degree for a supervillain.
So go smash that like button.
Find us wherever podcasts live.
Where's that, Jared?
A magical place called the internet.
Like Spider-Man and Elsa's shipping videos.
Dad, I'm hungry. Wait!
We're back. Thanks for sticking with us through that quick break. Is it true? I mean, of course, all of this is fiction.
Super
we
fiction.
have to look at, So we have to look at, like, what did they get right? What did they get wrong? Sort of things. So there's a lot of cliches about the FBI. What is it really like when the FBI interacts with local police? They really treated local police like bodyguards.
They really kind of did
in these first couple episodes. So, but what is it? How does it really behave? We tend to think that there are teams of FBI profilers hunting serial killers all the time. No. At any given time, there are only about 15 to 20 full-time special agent profilers in the behavioral analysis unit, and they're developing profiles for all kinds of different crimes. This is an article by Jerry Williams, and she's actually retired from the FBI and has her own podcast called FBI Retired Case File Review. So supposedly that's quite good, particularly if you're a fiction writer who's looking to incorporate the FBI. Her podcast is a great resource.
Interesting.
So, yeah. They portrayed the FBI as not playing well with others. They made the local authorities seem really dumb when they wrote this. And actually the FBI really, really respects local authorities and works with them and is very respectful of them because they legitimately need their help and understand that they have a lot of expertise to share.
Actually, I think of Criminal Minds does a good job of showcasing that sort of relationship, right?
Good.
Because they're always talking about we can't go into a case unless we're invited in. And I don't even know that that's true, but the show does a better job of showing the local heroism.
Well, and the local guys aren't a bunch of idiots.
No.
I mean, just because they don't work for the FBI doesn't mean they're dumb. So,
right. I always wanted to be an FBI. Well, I should say I wanted to be a GBI profiler.
Oh, yes.
Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And so I always thought that would be really cool. So as a kid, I did like a project on the GBI and I wrote them a letter.
You'd have been so good at that.
And then they sent me all this stuff back. Like I got all kinds of swag. Yeah.
That's so
fun.
cool. You'd have been so good at that. But I'm glad it didn't happen because then you'd still be in Georgia and I wouldn't know you.
That's true.
So, I can be sad for little Jackie that she didn't achieve that particular dream, but also be happy that I got to meet adult Jackie.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm here too.
Yeah,
it was good.
Misconceptions that there's some kind of central database. And there is no database where you can type a person's name in and learn everything about them.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not. No, it doesn't happen. There is not a central database that the government has that has every parking ticket, every place you've ever been. It's just, there's a reason why you have to piece it all together from phone records and local records and
this is why analysts exist, because they could go to all of these different places and put it together.
Yeah, exactly. That FBI agents work for federal prosecutors. They work with them, not for them. The FBI is its own entity. All FBI agents seem to work on task forces, and that's not true. This is actually really interesting that they'll team up with a squad mate, like the team of people that they actually work with for safety or to get additional thoughts on things. But they have a very entrepreneurial ownership of their cases, that it's up to them without a whole lot of oversight in most cases to decide what resources they need, when, what their budget's going to look like, and put those teams together to work with. They're not task forces put together by some one head honcho. It's a very much an agent sees an issue and goes after it and sets it up themselves.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's really neat. It's a lot of agency to put on a single person. Really respects their intelligence and their capacity to see an issue and try and solve it.
Right. The respect of the expertise.
Yeah.
The talent.
They spend a lot of time hiring people. And then once they're hired, they really let them do their job.
Right. Which is great.
Imagine that.
Let's
let people do their jobs. The FBI senior executives hardly ever out in the field. That you see them all the time in these shows where, they have the head honchos, the director of the FBI is here. No. They don't want to be out there. Not the director of the FBI, not an assistant director in charge, not a special agent in charge, not an assistant special agent in charge. If something goes wrong, they want plausible deniability because that's how you get promoted. Agents use intimidation and threats during interrogations. First of all, they don't interrogate people. They interview people. And second of all, they don't want adversarial confrontations, because not only are they trying to get information from these people, they are trying to build networks of people who can help them find more people involved with whatever awful thing is happening.
Yeah, it's a little different than crime to crime.
Yeah.
Right? Crime to crime is one thing, but when you have a rabbit hole you're trying to get through, you need to keep making progress.
Yeah, you don't want to collapse the rabbit hole. You need to find help to dig it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, look at us.
Interview is a bit of a euphemism, though.
Yeah.
They're interrogating. They're just doing it.
They're just doing
nicely.
it really polite. They're really polite about it. Yeah.
They're still catching flies. They're just doing it with honey.
Yeah, exactly. FBI agents are perfect and never get in trouble. And she said, this one's actually kind of true.
Well, look at them. They're so big, like manipulators with their interviews. I'm just kidding.
Well, she said that they all live by the idea that you don't embarrass the Bureau, and that there's going to be a lot of problems if you embarrass the Bureau. And if you don't, you don't get in trouble. It's not worth it to jeopardize your investigations that way.
What's interesting is, organizationally speaking, the ability to have that mindset as an agent is super helped by the fact that you have so much autonomy. Mm-hmm. It's the respect coming from the top down to do your job without much, broader leeway and without all of the big, heavy oversight that allows you to then not have to worry about embarrassing
Yeah.
anybody, because you don't have to worry about that, positive disobedience, right? That we talked about episodes ago, like a year ago.
Yeah.
Like we talked about that, I've got to break this rule to do something good. Well, they have circumvented that by kind of getting rid of the tight net of rules.
Right.
And then giving them a character, right? That's the thing. If you have rules, if you have a character that guides you, it's just better in the long run.
Agreed. Agents have no sense of humor. That's not true at all.
I'm sure there's just as many dorks working there as anywhere else.
They said, they tend to work long hours in close proximity to coworkers, and that lots and lots of practical jokes happen. They take their job very seriously, but they don't take their relationships so seriously. They're humans.
Well,
They're
I think everybody thinks of like
robots.
The Matrix.
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson,
Even that's like really funny. I mean, have you ever you watch those movies and it's legitimately funny.
It really is legitimately funny, but he's so serious.
But that's why it's so funny. Yeah. All FBI agents are white males. Unfortunately, this one's actually kind of true.
It's too true.
Yes, they're approximately 70% of special agents are white males, but they are working actively to try and reflect the population for which the FBI is working. So they're actively recruiting women, people of color, particularly women of color is a very, very underrepresented group in the FBI, and they are actively working to try and change that because they do have a different perspective. They do bring something new to the table that...
I wonder how that happened. You can look at other organizations or institutions or, just other career paths, and you could kind of see how they ended up being so lopsided as far as their diversity. But I have trouble understanding how that ended up so much like that.
Because they went to universities and picked out the white males. Those were the ones that came to the booth. and because there were a bunch of white males at the booth, those are the other people didn't
I think
go.
it was the ball started sort of rolling in that direction.
I really think
situation.
that's sort of the FBI and, these men who've grown up thinking, they wanted this exciting career, which it is an exciting career. It can be not always exciting, just like any career. Life isn't always exciting. It would be horribly stressful if it were.
Right. I guess I'm thinking about all the different things that could have caused that. Did it start with mistrust of local law enforcement in certain communities that then prevented those individuals who did go to college, people of color who did go to college, from looking at the federal level as a possibility? I'm looking at all the different ways, because I know that for sure it's a ball rolling in one direction.
Right.
But there's definitely certain things per institution that sort of are linchpins.
Well, and they may have also not gone to historically black universities to recruit to for a long time. That would make sense to me as well.
Because you can't be in Baltimore, DC area and not, that's a very diverse community. So as far as percentages, maybe it's not great as far as the percentages in college, but the numbers are good. So there's still a number of people to choose from. But it seems like there's a distrust of local law enforcement, or I don't know. It's interesting.
It is interesting. I don't know what happened, but they are actively trying to repair that.
That's
so
good.
I think that's great.
That's great.
Yeah, because we should want all of our law enforcement agencies to represent demographically the people which they're protecting.
Yes.
It helps remove bias as much as possible. Every person has a bias. But anyway, so the character of Joe Carroll, was he based on a real serial killer? Oh, yes, he actually was. Actually, he was based on several. He's an amalgamation of 4 different serial killers. Now, the only one that they've officially released is Ted Bundy, because they wanted him to be attractive and charming, which we all know that that's subjective.
Totally subjective.
As we talked about the last episode.
Yes.
Totally subjective. Ted Bundy is not hot.
No.
The only one that they mentioned at the time of this article, which was in 2014, was Ted Bundy because the others were still living.
Ooh.
But
Ooh.
you know who's died since then?
Who?
Charlie Manson.
Oh.
And I'm
okay.
certain he's got to be one, right? With the whole following and all the...
It kind of does feel that way.
All the stuff. I'll post an article about that. I'm not going to talk about Charlie Manson right now, but...
No.
I'll put an article on our social media. You can find us on Facebook. Killer Fun Podcast, exploring the intersection of crime and entertainment. You can find us on Twitter at Killer Fun Pod, or you can send me an email, killerfunpodcast@gmail.com. All right. What about Delta Rho Gamma at Winslow University?
That alphabet soup has foreign to me.
Yeah, me too. I was never in a sorority.
Nope.
Winslow University is fictional.
Well, good.
But there is a Delta Rho Gamma sorority.
Oh, that's stupid.
No, it was formed after the show.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right. Well, then that's
It
all right
was-
then.
it was
Because how
formed-
scary is that? Like, you don't want your college or your sorority like implicated in these kind of shows because
No.
there's weirdos who might then, or I don't know, make a sorority. What are they doing?
I don't think that they knew anything about the following, to be honest.
Whoops.
It was founded November 15th of 2016. So
Please tell me.
near the
Please
end.
tell me they invited Kevin Bacon to one of their like kickoffs.
I hope so. They didn't say anything about that. So I would think that they would have mentioned that, but I don't know when this website was created, but it looks like they might have only had 2 members, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's funny.
That's more of a couple of people getting together. But if they want to call themselves a sorority and build something, I'm totally fine with
totally for it.
that. Yep. The prison, Virginia Central Penitentiary, also fictional. It's not-
I like it better when shows do it that way.
Yeah, me too. I don't know. I don't want to. So that many people, 112 people, went and saw Carol in prison. And they did it with different identities. No. Let's just say, no. You can have that many people on your visitors list. You're probably not going to be able to have that many visitors, partly because I just read an article about this, about a woman who was accompanying a woman who was going to see a family member who was incarcerated, and how they use visitation as a means of punishment. And so probably if they were at all trying to punish Carol in any way, they would have revoked his privileges. You also have to, if you want to visit somebody in prison, any prison in the United States, like not jail, not like if they've been arrested for something and you need to like get them attorney in and bail them out and things. You don't have to go through this whole process. But if somebody is in prison, they've been convicted, there's a huge, long process. You have to have background checks done. You have to submit photo IDs, social security numbers. It can take 4 weeks, 30 to 90 days to get approval. And then they don't tell you. It's up to the inmate to tell you whether you've been approved or not. So it's no.
It's a long process.
I think it would have been difficult to near impossible for all of these people, which we saw at least 4 just in the first 2 episodes, who had multiple identities visiting Carol. Mm-hmm. No, that's not going to happen.
They wouldn't get approved.
No, they wouldn't get approved. They wouldn't get approved.
No.
Our psychology break.
Psychology break. Let's dive into the minds.
Was Edgar Allan Poe mentally ill? Probably. Yeah, probably. They don't.
Maybe like several things.
Yeah. Well,
But probably not as severe as you might think.
Right. Well, he had a very troubled life. I'm sure I'll post some articles about his whole troubled life. But he definitely suffered from depression. That we can be relatively
Right. That was
confident
kind of
about.
well documented. Right?
Yes. But some of his other issues suggest bipolar disorder, made worse by drug and alcohol abuse, for sure. He also is believed to have had epileptic seizures. So, that doesn't help things. And some of the things that he also talked about a lot of mental illness in his work. It was, whether it's autobiographical or not, doesn't really mean anything, but he identified some things that we now know what they are, which I thought was kind of interesting. So in this article is from Scientific Electronic Library Online. In the story, The Fall of the House of Usher, the family members suffer from a hereditary disease that presents as pallor. So they were anemic, and they were very sensitive to light and had a weakness in their extremities along with behavioral disorders. And this is a detailed description that is for porphyria that had not been described in literature or was not a part of the medical documentation at that time. So it's kind of interesting. He probably knew somebody.
He must have.
Yeah, to be able to get all of it correct. And in The Businessman, the title character suffered head trauma in childhood, and that had caused antisocial behavior from probably a lesion on the brain, and he had obsessive compulsive components to that, which I thought was kind of interesting. So
that's interesting. I mean, he was a very dark individual, and a lot of
tragedy.
People would maybe assume that because he writes such morbid things that would be what points to his mental illnesses, but really that's not it. So people might think he's far more ill than he really was. He was actually just very astute.
Right.
No, he definitely had a morbid mind. And
yes.
But it's not insanity.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I mean, just like you can have somebody who's a counselor or a therapist of some kind who then turns around and commits suicide. They know the right things to say, but that doesn't mean that they're well or that they're unwell.
Right.
So if you might write morbid, terrible things and be a very well-adjusted, kind, fun, loving individual who's a joy to be around, but you have this dark part to your mind where you can write these awful, awful things. Oh, I started thinking about I had asked you, I don't know what to cover. We've covered a lot of cults lately.
We really have covered a lot of cults, but keep watching this series.
Yeah. Okay. I'll keep after it. But we talked a lot about cults and serial killers because we just covered NXIVM and Ted Bundy. So, we've talked a lot about that. So I was like, I don't know what else to cover. And you mentioned, well, what about Ryan having a relationship with Claire? I couldn't find any specific about that, but it reminded me that there was kind of an interesting phenomenon after September 11th. There was about 200 widows of firefighters who went to help with that tragedy. And it was very important to the firefighters who were left to really take care of these widows. And there are a whole bunch of them that divorced their wives and married widows, a large enough percentage that the New York City Fire Department expanded its staff of licensed counselors from about a dozen to close to 300.
Whoa. Wow.
Because it was a very concerning experience that they had they had one family that was shattered. And
now there's two.
And now there's two families that are shattered. And the idea was to pull the firefighters out of the role of therapist and consoler for these widows, that they can support them, but a little more distantly.
Well, the thing they forgot, obviously, is that shared traumatic experience is such a draw. And so they put actually two people had been through a very similar same tragedy in close quarters. And
Yes, exactly. And I was going to say, we just saw that with the branding. In NXIVM, we had this trauma bonding. They actually call it compassion fatigue. So when caregivers experience a kind of secondary post-traumatic stress, and that causes issues in their relationships. So thank you, Richard Jerome, for that article from 2003.
Wow. I never really heard about that.
Oh, really? Oh,
I never heard about all of the marriages that came out of that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that much, but it does surprise me that they would divorce people to do it. It's one thing when two people bond over tragedy. Like I could see a lot of the single firefighters end up marrying widows but I did not.
Like a dozen divorced their wives to marry a
That's
widow.
Interesting.
It's so sad.
It is sad.
It's so sad. They've got their spouse at home who loves them and suddenly can't relate. They don't feel like they can relate because they haven't gone through quite this exact tragedy. And here, these two people missing the same person, they kind of bond over that.
Oh, man.
All right, real life. Carol mentioned at one point that there are 3,000 active serial killers in the U.S. And that is, they believe, about right.
Isn't that scary?
Oy vey. So we think of like the 70s as being like the heyday for serial killers because there's a lot of them that are famous from that time. And really, the FBI says that serial killers account for less than 1% of murders in the United States. And that's down quite a bit. And they attribute that decline to longer prison sentences, no parole, better forensic science, less hitchhiking, more helicopter parents actually has a limiting effect on serial killers because they catch it early when they start torturing animals and things. They nip it in the bud. And, 60 million security cameras in the United States.
Well, that does help. Yeah. That does help.
If you know you're on camera, you're less likely to do something awful.
It's true.
Especially in public.
It's interesting. You don't actually read about the benefits of helicopter parents since helicopter parents is kind of a derogatory sort of term, but people really do forget that there was stuff going on that caused parents to take an interest and caused people to change the culture to protect them. Now, is everything that happened since then good and beneficial? No. People can overreact. They can definitely overcorrect. But in a lot of ways, we started paying attention in ways that was very helpful, like I think about, sometimes I see a meme on Facebook and people were like, I survived riding in a car with no seatbelt and da-da-da-da-da. And they kind of make these jokes. And I'm like, okay,
but how many didn't?
A freaking lot of them. A freaking lot of people than you want to recognize, actually. Thrown out the window of cars and things like that. And oh my God, those cars didn't go near as fast as the ones today. So let's just, back off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, my kids still can't believe that I was ever allowed to ride in the bed of a truck.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, that's so dangerous. I'm like, yep, it
kind of really is. Yeah.
There's a reason why it's illegal now for anybody under the age of 18 to do that, because if you're over 18, you should know better. And they're like, yeah, survival of the fittest. Let's weed out the stupid people. Here's something interesting. The number of serial killers serial killings has supposedly fallen, but so is the clearance rate by a lot. So it used to be 91% clearance rate in 1965, which means we have a suspect and we've arrested them and indicted them. That's what clearance is. It doesn't mean they were convicted. It just means that for all intents and purposes, they've
caught the person.
They've solved the case. Now it's only down to like less than 62%.
Eek.
And we had talked about that back when we talked about Dexter.
We did talk about that, clearance rates.
Yeah. And so about 40% of the time people get away with murder.
Well, you know what? Internet.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. The FBI put out a press release in 2016 that said if there's such a thing as an ideal profession for a serial killer, it may well be as a long-haul trucker.
Oh, yeah, which is why they created a certain database.
Yes. Yes, they've that I don't have the information on, but yes, they're like tracking these things a little more closely than they used to. And part of that is because of Samuel Little, and we talked about him in the Dexter episode as well, that he's claims to have been involved in more than 90 murders, and they have evidence linking him to at least 60 homicides. And he got away with it for a really long time.
Across state lines, the investigations wouldn't meet. And so now I think it's VICAP that they can put it in. And now they can look at motives like MOs. I mean, they can look at different types of signatures, and they can kind of compare across state lines so that they can see whether there's a pattern outside of the...
Man, that's so valuable. And also Sam Little was caught and put in jail for a number of crimes that should have been red flags, but because he was traveling, that was part of it. There was a lot of rape and things where he was let out too early, which is I'm not for mass incarceration, but I think there's too little emphasis put on these kinds of violent crimes, particularly against women, and too much put on drugs.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that they've got it backwards.
The jails and then the prisons, they all have very little margin because they're so full up with certain types of like war on drugs situations that they can't put those who need a little bit more vetting before being let out under the microscope the way they ought to. When really the research is showing that, for instance, these mass shootings that we're experiencing, all done by men, the thing that they have connected them, people have wanted to blame mental health, not a thing. It's not coming out. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people who were diagnosed with certain mental health issues that were involved with the mass shootings. There's definitely a percentage of them, but it was not significant as a predictor of the shootings, which was like kind of a big like, what? But if they're shooting like mass amounts of people or 4 or 5 people at a time, doesn't that by like definition mean you're mentally ill? Not really, actually. And that's why evil exists. Yeah. So, that's kind of a problem, but it wasn't a predictor. It wasn't a good predictor. The only thing that's a good predictor is violence against women, domestic abuse, and dialogue online. So there was actually, if you added up the domestic abuse, general violence towards women, and those who online had talked about women as being inferior, but maybe hadn't acted on it in their own lives.
Like incels?
Like 100% connection.
Yeah.
Every freaking one of them. That's a freaking predictor. I think the actual number was like 98.9 or something like ridiculous. But it was so big. It might as well be every of them. It might as well be every one of them. It's so big that you don't see that in research. It's such a good predictor that I'm surprised that we haven't actually made more progress, but actually some legislations have taken steps since that time to change how the reporting is done. But the New York Times had a great article talking about that connection. Worth reading.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I'll get that link from you and post it on our social media. Doesn't it kind of make you feel a little bit like a second-class citizen sometimes?
Yeah, and also
because really, it's you and me. It's people like us. It's really a huge population of the United States, women and children, and the violence against us is us in the general term, not us individually, is a huge indication of an issue, and it's ignored.
But it's been ignored for centuries.
Well, it is.
It's been ignored,
but I feel like by 2019 we should be better at this. But I think we should be better at quite a lot of things by this point in the human history, and we're still not there.
You would think. You would think. Yeah. Well, and that's what bothers me. We have made progress in so many ways, but with this particular issue, we just got prettier with it. We put a nice theological name to it. It's an ism, and it's supposed to elevate everyone when actually it demotes people. And, people like John MacArthur, hey, go home, man.
Yeah. Amen. Sit down and shut up. That's where we're at. All right. So Edgar Allan Poe really did have a very, very sad life. He had a tragic childhood. He lost his very young wife at a very young age. He married his 13-year-old cousin in private when he was like 27. And then she died at the age of 24, and he never quite recovered. His education was interrupted by gambling debts and then being kicked out of West Point, which I'm not going to talk about, but it's an interesting story that I'll post a link to. He didn't have a lot of literary success in his life, though obviously a lot since then. He had a lot of substance abuse and died at the age of 40. But the biggest mystery that we have about Edgar Allan Poe is not what mental illness he had. It is actually his death. That's really, really, really a series of events that are inconceivable. So as I mentioned, he lost his young wife, and he'd been a heavy drinker already when she passed away, but he took refuge in a bottle. And this is from History Today by Richard Cavendish. Had a series of failed relationships because he was desperate to find another wife to look for some happiness. He wrote in 1849 in the springtime, "My life seems wasted," and he was just 40. And in the summer, he went to Philadelphia and was drinking heavily and had terrifying hallucinations. For 10 days, he wrote, "I was totally deranged." So that may have also there may have been some physical issues with the drinking. He may not have been quite as much of a drinker as they thought. He just had a really bad reaction to alcohol. That's a possibility.
Maybe somebody slipped him some freaking
hallucinogenics. Not enough, I don't think. But he met some friends. He was on his way to New York City, and he met some friends in Baltimore for a glass of whiskey as he was passing through. And then he disappeared for 6 days, and no one knows what happened to him. They found him in an Irish tavern 6 days later, and he was wearing somebody else's clothes. It's never a good sign when you like drop out and nobody can find you and you show up wearing somebody else's clothes. And it's unclear as to what happened to him during that time. Really, they have no idea where he was, what he was doing, whether he sold his fine clothing for alcohol or whether he was in a situation that he ended up with somebody else's clothes. Nobody knows. But he was taken to Washington Medical College, and he was pale and sweaty and talking incessantly to imaginary things. He was absolutely hallucinating. And then at like 3 a.m. on a Sunday, he finally relaxed and said, "Lord, help my poor soul," and died. And that was his final words, which are the final words that the lady said in the show before she stabbed herself in the face with an ice pick. It's a mystery.
That is a mystery. It does sound medical, doesn't it?
It does. Well, it sounds like a combination of things. As with everything, people are complicated. There was definitely a lot of grief. There was definitely alcohol involved, but it does seem like I don't know anybody
doesn't make you
hallucinate
like that, or have all of those other symptoms.
Well, not generally, but it's unknown to what extent he actually abused alcohol. So maybe he'd soaked himself in enough whiskey to pull out that reaction. So sometimes alcoholics they'll be really functional and they don't drink every day, but when they do drink, they drink a lot. And particularly those people can end up to a point where they'll not drink for a few days and then they'll have 1 or 2 drinks, which shouldn't make them wildly inebriated, but it will because of the damage that they've done to their body. There's all kinds of brain chemistry things.
I've never heard of like the hallucinations or the particularly like pale skin, sweaty, like
yeah. I've been pale skinned and sweaty after a night of too much drinking. But nobody took you to
like a medical college and went, "Help true. This," you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was the 18 whatevers. 1830s. 18.
That's pretty funny, though.
50s.
That's not funny. It's horrible. But when you said that, like, they took him to a medical college, I was like, that's serious.
Yeah.
Because they were like, he's still alive, but do some research. And I'm like,
We got to study this guy because most people who are drunk do not
do
hallucinate.
not do this. Like, what is happening?
They
It does.
do.
It sounds like, it almost sounds like syphilis.
Ooh.
Like, it sounds like one of those, or like the brain tumors that can really change the way that you are. Like, it sounds
like
like
a traumatic brain injury type of situation.
Yeah, or some of those brain, like, I don't know. It just sounds very particular.
It
Obviously,
does
they
sound-
didn't do an autopsy or something.
I have no idea.
I don't know why you wouldn't. If anybody I was going to do an autopsy on, this would be it. Right
Well,
here.
we know they did autopsies at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So if you're an author interested in getting the FBI correct in your work, I have a resource for you. It's called Thriller Fest, and it's a convention for crime, mystery, suspense, and horror writers. For the past several years, the FBI has offered a workshop called Today's FBI Crime Essentials for Writers.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, because the FBI's Office of Public Affairs is extremely passionate about the idea of accurate portrayal of the FBI in pop culture. So much so that they'll even invite fiction writers to send in questions to make sure that they get it right.
That's really cool.
I thought it was really neat.
Okay, I have to do something. I have to say something.
Okay.
All right, so I got that idea of syphilis in my head, so I had to Google it.
Okay.
Okay, so the Time Magazine article came out a while ago. So some historians believe Poe may have suffered from either rabies, cholera, or syphilis.
Oh.
That based on their research. And some actually historians dispute the influence of alcohol in the situation, although it seems like that's maybe a minority. I think if you have rabies, cholera, or syphilis, alcohol is a bad idea.
Yeah, you don't say.
Yeah. So, but it does look like they are
Really?
yeah.
Well, so
Interesting.
there's more stuff going on than just a sad man drinking away his depression.
I think so. Of course, alcohol doesn't help you if you're fighting any of these diseases. I guess some people think influenza, maybe even.
Wow.
And then some say murder.
Fascinating. Some say murder. Also possible.
Mm-hmm. Also possible.
He seemed like he wasn't an easy man to be around. Bit morose and sad.
Yeah,
And
I get that
gambling
impression.
debts and things. So who knows? He might have been murdered because he owed
he was
somebody
either
something.
completely morose and difficult, or he was a world of fun.
Oh, yeah. I bet it was one extreme or the other.
Right. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
He wasn't, there was no,
But you could
probably
tell
not
he was a
in
deep,
between.
sensitive man for him to grieve his wife like that, though.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. By all accounts, he adored her and was very caring towards her, even though she was sickly from the time they got married, which I'm sure, I don't know, the 27-year-old marrying a 13-year-old.
It seems awful now, but in those days it wasn't near as bad.
No, but he did hide it for several years that their marriage.
Wasn't his cousin, you said?
Yes.
See, and that's part of it too. How Freudian.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so next time, your hometown murders and ours. I found a good one. I'm excited to research and talk about it.
I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, because it's awful. It's terrible, but I think it's going to have a lot of interesting aspects.
Okay, crime podcasts are just funny. You know that? Yeah. I'm so excited. Yes, it's awful. It's terrible. People died. Yay!
A lot of people died.
Oh, I can't wait now.
Yeah. So our hometowns and yours. So join us for that. Thank you to everybody who sent them in. We can't wait to share them all with you. Thanks for listening.
Till next time.
Forge Audio.
Dream it.
Build it.
Share it.